I am Amanda, 32 years old, and never imagined my hard-earned dream penthouse would become the center of a family war. My older sister Catherine always got what she wanted, but when she demanded my home, I finally said no. During her lavish wedding, her perfect facade cracked with a slap that echoed through the ballroom, exposing years of manipulation nobody saw coming. That single moment of public humiliation changed everything I thought I knew about family loyalty. Before I tell you how my sister's perfect wedding turned into a legal nightmare, drop a comment where you're watching from, and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up to entitled family members. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happened when my sister slapped me in front of a judge. Growing up with Catherine was like living in the shadow of a supernova. 7 years my senior, she commanded attention wherever she went, with her magnetic personality and stunning looks. Our parents adored her, giving her the newest clothes, the best opportunities, and seemingly endless praise. I was the quiet one, the afterthought, always trying to measure up, but never quite making the cut in their eyes. "Amanda, why can't you be more outgoing like your sister?" My mother would ask when I preferred reading in my room over attending social gatherings. Catherine never had trouble making friends. These comparisons became the soundtrack of my childhood, a constant reminder that I would always be second best. While Catherine breezed through life with everything handed to her, I learned early that I would have to work twice as hard for half the recognition. When college came around, Catherine attended an expensive private university on our parents' dime, complete with a luxury apartment and a brand new car. Meanwhile, I cobbled together scholarships, student loans, and worked 20 hours a week at the campus coffee shop to put myself through architecture school. Those years were grueling but formative. Between classes, work, and studio time, I barely slept 4 hours a night. My roommate Stephanie would often find me passed out at my drafting table, pencil still in hand. "You're going to work yourself to death," she'd warn. But I knew this was my only path forward. The hard work paid off when I graduated with honors and landed an entry-level position at Hartman & Associates, one of the most prestigious architectural firms in the city. Starting at the bottom, I spent years designing mundane structures like parking garages and storage facilities, but I poured my heart into every project. My dedication caught the attention of the senior partners, and I began climbing the ranks, eventually specializing in high-end residential properties. By 30, I had designed award-winning apartments for some of the wealthiest clients in the city. The irony wasn't lost on me that I still lived in a cramped one-bedroom rental with second-hand furniture while creating luxury spaces for others. But I had a plan. Every month I put aside a significant portion of my salary into savings, living frugally, and avoiding the lavish lifestyle many of my colleagues embraced. After 5 years of disciplined saving and a particularly generous bonus from a celebrity client, I finally had enough for a down payment on my dream home. The moment I stepped into the penthouse on Riverside Drive with its floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing panoramic city views, I knew this was it. The space was flooded with natural light, had high ceilings perfect for my art collection, and a terrace where I could grow the herb garden I'd always wanted. At 31, I signed the mortgage papers with shaking hands, still not quite believing this beautiful space was actually mine. Catherine, meanwhile, had flitted between relationships and jobs, never settling on anything for long. Our parents continued to support her financially well into her 30s, paying her rent when she was between opportunities, and covering her credit card bills when she overspent. Despite being the older sibling, she seemed perpetually stuck in adolescence, expecting others to clean up her messes. Her pattern of taking my things without asking had started in childhood with borrowed sweaters and CDs that were never returned. As adults, it evolved into borrowing larger sums of money that were conveniently forgotten, using my vacation days at our parents' beach house without asking, and once taking my car for a weekend trip that resulted in a fender bender she never offered to pay for. When Catherine met William at a charity gala, the family breathed a collective sigh of relief. Handsome, charming, and from a respected family, William seemed to bring out a more responsible side of my sister. He worked as a financial advisor for a prestigious firm, and appeared to have the stability Catherine desperately needed. Within 6 months they were engaged, and Catherine transformed into a woman obsessed with creating the perfect wedding. What none of us knew then was that beneath William's polished exterior and Catherine's newfound happiness lay serious financial problems. William's investment firm had taken significant losses during the recent economic downturn, and his personal finances were not nearly as robust as he portrayed. Catherine, with her penchant for luxury and disregard for budgets, had accumulated substantial credit card debt that she'd kept hidden from everyone, including William. Despite our complicated history, I was genuinely happy for Catherine when she announced her engagement. Perhaps marriage would give her the purpose and direction she'd been lacking. I offered to help with wedding planning and even designed custom invitations as my gift to the couple. For once, it seemed like we might develop a healthier adult relationship. It was around this time that I met Michael through a mutual friend at an art gallery opening. An environmental engineer with kind eyes and a quiet confidence, Michael was refreshingly different from the competitive architects and designers in my social circle. On our third date, Catherine called with a wedding emergency, and I reluctantly cut our evening short. Michael's response surprised me. "Your sister seems to have a talent for creating urgencies whenever you're enjoying yourself," he observed gently. "Has that been a pattern?" No one had ever so accurately named Catherine's behavior before. As our relationship deepened, Michael helped me recognize other dynamics I'd normalized from years of conditioning. "You deserve to take up space too, Amanda," he'd remind me when I'd automatically minimize my achievements around my family. With Michael's support, I gradually began setting small boundaries with Catherine, though the biggest test was yet to come. As Catherine's wedding date approached, her demands escalated from occasional favors to constant expectations. What started as weekly phone calls for advice turned into daily texts with urgent requests requiring immediate attention. My evenings and weekends disappeared into a vortex of bridal appointments, vendor meetings, and emotional support sessions. "Amanda, you have to come with me to this cake tasting. William is working late again, and I need someone with good taste," she insisted. One Tuesday afternoon when I was on deadline for a major project. When I explained I couldn't leave work, she sighed dramatically. "I guess some things are more important to you than your only sister's happiness." The guilt trips were effective, and I found myself rearranging my professional and personal life to accommodate her increasingly unreasonable demands. Michael noticed my growing exhaustion and suggested I establish clearer boundaries, but years of family dynamics made this easier said than done. 3 months before the wedding, Catherine called with what seemed like a reasonable request. "The photographer wants to do our engagement photos in an upscale setting with city views. Could we possibly use your penthouse? It would be perfect with those windows and that gorgeous terrace." I agreed without hesitation. My home was indeed photogenic, and this was something concrete I could offer that would actually help. The day of the photo shoot, I took the morning off work to clean and style the apartment, arranging fresh flowers and ensuring everything looked magazine-worthy. Catherine arrived with William the photographer and 3 large suitcases filled with outfit options. "We'll just be a few hours," she promised, as they took over my bedroom to change. I made coffee for everyone and retreated to a corner with my laptop to catch up on work emails. As the photographer captured the couple in various poses around my apartment, I noticed Catherine's lingering glances at my furnishings, the way her hand trailed possessively along my kitchen countertops. During a break, she cornered me in the hallway. "This place is even more gorgeous than I remembered," she said, her voice taking on a tone I recognized from childhood, the one she used when she wanted something. "You know, William and I have been talking about where we'll live after the wedding. His place is so bachelor pad and mine is too small for us both." A warning bell chimed faintly in my mind, but I ignored it. "There are some great properties coming on the market in Brookside. I could connect you with my realtor if you'd like." Catherine waved her hand dismissively. "Real estate is so expensive right now, and we'll have all these wedding expenses." She paused meaningfully. It would be so much easier if we had a place to stay while we figure things out. The implications hung in the air between us. You mean like temporarily? I asked cautiously. Well, I was thinking about your honeymoon. I offered, trying to find a compromise. If you need to save money, you're welcome to stay here while I'm at the Henderson project in Chicago next month. It would give you 2 weeks in the penthouse as a mini honeymoon. Catherine's eyes lit up, but not with gratitude. There was calculation there that made me uneasy. That would be perfect, she exclaimed, hugging me tightly, before rushing back to continue the photo shoot. That evening, after everyone left, I noticed small things out of place. My spare key was no longer on its hook in the kitchen, and several drawers in my home office appeared to have been rifled through. I dismissed my concerns as paranoia, until 2 weeks later when I came home early from work to find Catherine in my apartment with a real estate agent. What's going on? I asked, standing in my own doorway feeling like an intruder. Catherine barely flinched. Amanda, I didn't expect you until later. She turned to the woman beside her. This is my sister, the current owner. The real estate agent extended her hand. Jennifer Lane. Your sister was just showing me the property. The square footage is impressive for this neighborhood, and these views would certainly command top dollar. Confused, and increasingly angry, I waited until Jennifer excused herself to use the bathroom before confronting Catherine. Why are you showing my home to a real estate agent? And how did you even get in? Don't be so dramatic, Catherine replied, rolling her eyes. I made a copy of your key during the photo shoot. And I'm not selling your place. I'm just getting a valuation. A valuation for what I demanded. Catherine sighed as if I were being intentionally obtuse. For when William and I move in after the wedding, I told him about your offer, and he's thrilled. We'll need to make some changes though. That second bedroom you use as an office will need to become a proper guest room. The audacity left me speechless. Catherine, I never offered to let you move in. I offered 2 weeks while I'm in Chicago as a honeymoon gift. This is my home. Her expression hardened. You always were selfish, Amanda. Do you know how much William and I are spending on this wedding? We need to save where we can. That's not my responsibility, I replied, finding my voice. Your financial choices are yours to make. I already told William we'd be living here, she hissed, dropping all pretense of reasonableness. He thinks it's all arranged. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it would be to tell him now that my little sister is too selfish to help us out? The conversation devolved from there, with Catherine alternating between angry accusations and tearful pleas. She claimed I owed her this because our parents had always favored me, a blatant rewriting of history, that family should help family, and finally, that if I really loved her, I would want her to be happy. By the time she left, I was emotionally drained and second-guessing myself. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I should help my sister start her married life. These thoughts plagued me until Michael came over that evening, and I recounted the entire confrontation. Amanda, he said gently, taking my hands in his, your sister is manipulating you. You worked incredibly hard for this place. It's not selfish to want to keep your own home. His clear-eyed perspective helped me regain my footing. That night, I sent Catherine a kind but firm text, reiterating my boundaries. The honeymoon offer stood, but I would not be giving up my home. Her only response was a curt, whatever. The next day, I learned that William's family had influential connections, including a close friendship with Judge Rebecca Henderson, who would be attending the wedding. Catherine mentioned this repeatedly, emphasizing how important it was to impress William's high society connections. Little did I know how significant Judge Henderson's presence would become. 1 week before the wedding, our parents hosted a family dinner for relatives who had arrived from out of town. I arrived late due to a work emergency, slipping quietly into the dining room where conversation was already flowing freely. My cousin Grace immediately waved me over to an empty seat beside her. There's the generous sister of the hour, she exclaimed, giving me a side hug. Catherine was just telling us about your amazing wedding gift. That penthouse of yours is going to make such a beautiful first home for the newlyweds. I nearly choked on my water. Across the table, Catherine was deep in conversation with our aunt, studiously avoiding my gaze. For the remainder of dinner, various family members approached to commend my exceptional generosity each conversation, making it increasingly clear that Catherine had told everyone she would be moving into my home after the wedding. When I finally cornered her in the kitchen, Catherine was unrepentant. "Everyone thinks you're so wonderful now," she said with a shrug. "You should be thanking me." "You need to correct this," I insisted. "Tell them the truth before this gets any further out of hand." Catherine's eyes narrowed. "The truth is that family helps family, Amanda. Mom and Dad agree with me. They think you're being ridiculous about this whole thing." On cue, our mother entered the kitchen. "Girls, is everything all right, Amanda? Your sister is under so much stress with the wedding. Surely you can be a bit more accommodating during this special time." "Accommodating doesn't mean giving her my home," I replied, struggling to keep my voice even. My mother patted my arm condescendingly. "No one's asking you to give her anything permanently. You can stay with Michael for a while, can't you? Or rent a small place until Catherine and William find something suitable." The realization that my parents were complicit in Catherine's scheme hit me like a physical blow. They truly believed I should displace myself indefinitely for Catherine's convenience. Years of conditioning had me momentarily questioning whether I was in fact the unreasonable one in this scenario. The following day, I returned home from work to find 3 large boxes labeled "Kitchen" stacked outside my door. Inside my apartment, my phone was blinking with 7 missed calls from Catherine. When I called her back, her tone was breezy. "Did you see the boxes? The movers delivered them early. There are more coming tomorrow, but you don't need to worry about signing for them. I gave them a copy of my key." "Catherine, stop," I interrupted. "There's been a misunderstanding. You cannot move into my home. The boxes need to go back to your apartment." "There's no misunderstanding," she snapped, her friendly tone evaporating. "You've always been the favorite, Amanda. The smart one, the responsible one, the one with the perfect career and the perfect boyfriend, and now the perfect apartment. You've had everything handed to you while I've struggled. The least you can do is help me for once." The sheer audacity of her statement left me momentarily speechless. Catherine had rewritten our entire childhood to cast herself as the deprived sister, when the reality had been precisely the opposite. "That's not what happened, and you know it," I finally managed. "I worked for everything I have. Nothing was handed to me." "Whatever helps you sleep at night," Catherine retorted. "The fact is you owe me, and I've already told everyone at the wedding that we'll be living in your penthouse. William's entire family thinks it's our wedding present from you." The argument escalated until Catherine finally issued an ultimatum. Either I agree to let them move in, or she would tell our entire family and all the wedding guests that I had cruelly withdrawn my promised gift at the last minute. "You'll look like the most selfish person alive," she threatened. "Is that really what you want?" After she hung up, I sat among her moving boxes feeling utterly trapped. The following morning, I called the only person who consistently saw through Catherine's manipulations. "She's bluffing," Michael assured me, after I recounted the latest development. "She won't actually tell everyone you reneged on a gift you never offered in the first place. It would make her look unstable." "You don't know Catherine," I sighed. "She's perfectly capable of creating a scene if she doesn't get her way." "Then let her," Michael said firmly. "Amanda, this is your home. You earned it. You love it. Don't let her take it from you, through emotional blackmail." Bolstered by his support, I drafted a clear email to Catherine copying our parents and William. I reiterated that while my offer of a 2-week honeymoon stay still stood, I had never offered my home as a permanent residence, and would not be doing so now. I requested that all delivered boxes be removed within 24 hours, after which I would consider them abandoned property. The response was immediate and multi-pronged. Catherine called me in tears. Our mother left a scathing voicemail about family loyalty, and our father texted that I was breaking Catherine's heart over just an apartment. Only William remained silent. making me wonder if he was truly aware of what Catherine had been planning. The day before the wedding, I was serving as reluctant bridesmaid at Catherine's final dress fitting, when I overheard her speaking to her maid of honor in the dressing room. "Don't worry about the living situation," Catherine was saying. "I'll have that penthouse one way or another. Amanda will cave, she always does. And if she doesn't, I have other methods." The cold calculation in her voice sent chills through me. This wasn't just my entitled sister making impulsive demands. This was a deliberate campaign to take something that belonged to me. For a moment, I considered backing out of the wedding entirely, but the family fallout would be nuclear. Instead, I resolved to attend as planned, but remain vigilant against whatever methods Catherine had in mind. That night, I changed all my passwords, secured important documents in a safe deposit box, and for the first time, seriously questioned whether I wanted to maintain a relationship with a sister who valued her desires over my boundaries. The answer wasn't as clear as it should have been, clouded by years of family expectation and my own lingering hope that Catherine might somehow change. The morning of Catherine's wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect October day, with just enough crispness in the air to feel festive without being cold. Despite my apprehension, I arrived at the bridal suite, as scheduled, armed with emergency supplies and a determined smile. Catherine was surprisingly civil, perhaps too focused on the minutiae of her special day to continue our property dispute. The ceremony venue, an historic stone church with stained glass windows and ivy-covered walls, looked like something from a fairy tale. Every detail had been meticulously planned, from the string quartet playing softly as guests arrived to the cascading white orchid arrangements flanking the altar. As I stood beside the other bridesmaids in my floor-length sage green gown, watching Catherine glide down the aisle on our father's arm, a complicated mix of emotions swirled within me. Despite everything, she was still my sister, and there was a part of me that genuinely wanted her to find happiness. She looked radiant in her designer gown, her face glowing with what appeared to be authentic joy as she approached William. The ceremony proceeded without a hitch. The couple exchanged traditional vows, though I noticed Catherine emphasized the "for richer" part with particular enthusiasm. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the assembled guests erupted in applause, myself included. For a brief, optimistic moment, I wondered if the penthouse drama had been a stress-induced aberration, something we could move past, now that the wedding pressure was behind us. This hope lasted precisely until the reception, which was held in the grand ballroom of the Windsor Hotel. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over 300 elegantly dressed guests, mingling at tables adorned with elaborate floral centerpieces and gold-accented china. A 10-piece orchestra played softly in the background as waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvre. I was seated at the family table near the head table with Michael beside me, offering silent support through occasional hand squeezes and reassuring smiles. From our vantage point, I could see Judge Henderson, an elegant woman in her 60s, with silver hair and impeccable posture, seated at a prominent table with other members of William's extended family and professional connections. After the first course was served, the best man rose for his toast, followed by the maid of honor. Both speeches were appropriately sentimental and humorous, drawing appreciative laughter and a few tears from the crowd. Then, unexpectedly, Catherine stood and tapped her glass. "William and I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate with us today," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. "We're overwhelmed by your love and generosity." She proceeded to thank various people individually: her parents for their emotional support, William's parents for welcoming her into their family, and specific friends for their roles in the wedding. Then her gaze fixed on me, and her smile took on an edge that immediately set alarm bells ringing. "And a special thank you to my baby sister Amanda," she continued, raising her glass in my direction. All eyes in the room turned toward me. "Not only has she been my rock throughout the wedding planning, but she's given us the most generous wedding gift imaginable. Thanks to Amanda's incredible generosity, William and I will be starting our married life in her beautiful penthouse apartment." A murmur of impressed reactions rippled through the crowd, Beside me, Michael tensed. Across the room, I noticed Judge Henderson's eyebrows raise slightly, as she glanced between Catherine and me with evident interest. Amanda knows how much we've admired her place. Catherine continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness, and when she offered to let us make it our first home together, we were just overwhelmed with gratitude. Isn't that right, William? William, who had been taking a sip of champagne, looked momentarily confused, but recovered quickly with a non-committal smile. His reaction confirmed my suspicion that he wasn't fully aware of Catherine's machinations. Several guests approached our table afterward, congratulating me on my extraordinary generosity. Each comment felt like a twist of the knife, especially when accompanied by remarks like, "You must be very successful to be able to give away a penthouse," or, "Where will you be living now?" I smiled tightly through these interactions, until I could stand it no longer. When a distant cousin expressed amazement at my sacrifice, something in me snapped. "Actually, there's been a misunderstanding," I said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "I've offered Catherine and William my apartment for a 2-week honeymoon stay, while I'm away on business, not as a permanent residence." The cousin looked embarrassed and quickly excused herself. Within minutes, confused whispers were circulating through the reception. Catherine, who had been making her rounds among the guests, caught wind of the clarification and made a beeline for our table, her white gown billowing behind her like storm clouds. "What are you doing?" she hissed, gripping my arm tightly and pulling me to my feet. "Correcting your lie," I replied, keeping my voice low but firm. "I never offered you my home permanently, and you know it." Catherine's face flushed crimson beneath her makeup. "We can discuss this later. Right now you're embarrassing me in front of everyone who matters to William." "You embarrassed yourself by announcing a gift I never gave," I countered gently, extracting my arm from her grip. "I'm happy to help you find a place of your own, but my penthouse is not an option." "After everything I've done for you," Catherine said, her voice rising dangerously. Nearby conversations halted as guests began to notice the tension between us. "You've always been so selfish, Amanda. Always thinking only about yourself." "That's not true," I maintained, increasingly aware of the audience we were attracting. "I've supported you in countless ways, including offering my home for your honeymoon. But giving up my residence entirely is beyond reasonable." "Reasonable?" Catherine's voice had reached a volume that carried across several tables. "What's reasonable about denying your sister the only thing she's ever asked of you? You have everything, Amanda. The career, the boyfriend, the perfect life, and you can't spare a single thing for me." By now, a significant portion of the reception had fallen silent, all eyes on our unfolding drama. William was making his way toward us, alarm evident on his face. Michael stood beside me, a steady presence, but wisely allowing me to fight my own battle. "Catherine, please," I said, acutely conscious of the spectacle we were creating. "This is your wedding day. Let's not do this here." "No, let's do exactly this here," she retorted, tears now streaming down her face, leaving black mascara tracks in their wake. "Let everyone see how little family means to you. Let them all know that the perfect Amanda refuses to help her sister start her married life in a decent home, instead of William's cramped apartment." "My apartment isn't cramped," William interjected, finally reaching us. "Catherine, what's going on? What's this about Amanda's penthouse?" "She promised it to us," Catherine cried, turning to her new husband. "She said we could live there after the wedding, and now she's taking it back." William looked confused. "You told me Amanda offered us a honeymoon stay, not a permanent home." A flash of panic crossed Catherine's face before she doubled down. "That's not what she said initially. She's changing the terms now because she's jealous of our happiness." The absurdity of this accusation momentarily stunned me into silence. In that pause, Catherine turned back to me, her expression contorting with rage. "You've always resented me," she spat. "Always trying to steal my spotlight, even on my wedding day." "That's not true," I said quietly. "I just want to keep my home." "Your home!" she shrieked. "What about my home? What about what I need?" and then it happened so quickly I had no time to react. Catherine's right hand flew up and connected with my cheek in a slap so loud, it seemed to echo through the suddenly silent ballroom. The force of it snapped my head to the side and sent me stumbling back a step. Gasps erupted from the assembled guests. Michael moved forward protectively as William grabbed Catherine's arm to prevent a second blow. My cheek burned with pain and humiliation as I stood frozen, unable to process what had just occurred. Through tears that had sprung unbidden to my eyes, I saw Judge Henderson rise deliberately from her seat, her expression grave as she observed the scene. The significance of her witness would become clear only later, but in that moment, all I could focus on was the overwhelming need to escape the hundreds of staring eyes. "I think you've made your feelings perfectly clear," I said to Catherine, my voice trembling, despite my efforts to control it. Turning to William, I added, "I'm sorry this happened at your wedding. The honeymoon offer is rescinded." With as much dignity as I could muster, I collected my purse from the table and walked toward the exit, Michael close behind me. The crowd parted silently to let us pass, their expressions ranging from shock to pity to morbid fascination. Just before reaching the door, I heard Catherine's voice ring out once more. "Go ahead and run away. You always do." I didn't turn back. Outside in the cool evening air, the tears I'd been holding back finally broke free. Michael wrapped his arms around me as I sobbed against his shoulder, the full impact of my sister's public betrayal washing over me in waves of hurt and anger. "Let's get you home," he said gently, when my tears subsided. As we walked toward the parking lot, the weight of what had transpired settled heavily upon me. My relationship with my sister would never be the same again, and I wasn't entirely sure that was a bad thing. The day after the wedding, I awoke with a slightly swollen cheek and an emotional hangover that felt worse than any alcohol-induced one. My phone displayed 37 missed calls and over 50 text messages, most from family members, either demanding I apologize to Catherine for ruining her wedding or checking if I was okay after the shocking incident. I silenced my phone and spent the day in bed, alternating between crying and staring numbly at the ceiling. Michael brought soup and sat with me in patient silence, offering comfort without pressure to talk. By evening, I felt strong enough to read some of the messages. My mother had sent several increasingly agitated texts, insisting I call Catherine immediately to make amends. She was under tremendous stress, one message read. "You know how important this wedding was to her. The least you could do is overlook one momentary lapse." My father's messages were less demanding, but still placed the burden of reconciliation on me. Friends who had witnessed the incident were universally supportive, expressing shock at Catherine's behavior and assuring me I'd done nothing wrong. Caroline, my closest friend since college, left a voicemail that made me smile for the first time since the slap. "I always knew your sister was a piece of work," she said. "But holy crap, Amanda, that was next level. Call me when you're ready to talk, and remember, family doesn't get a free pass to treat you like garbage." Catherine and William had departed immediately after the reception for a week-long Caribbean cruise, a fact for which I was profoundly grateful. The breathing room allowed me to process my feelings without immediate confrontation, though I knew the reckoning was merely postponed, not avoided. The Monday after the wedding, I returned to work, concealing the fading mark on my cheek with makeup and deflecting questions about the wedding with vague pleasantries. I was in the middle of a client meeting when my assistant interrupted with an urgent message. "There's a Judge Henderson in the lobby asking to speak with you," she whispered. "She says it's important." Surprised and somewhat apprehensive, I excused myself and went to meet the judge, whom I recognized immediately from the wedding. Up close, Rebecca Henderson was even more impressive, with keen, intelligent eyes that seemed to look straight through social niceties to the truth beneath. "Miss Reynolds," she greeted me, extending her hand. I apologize for the interruption, but I felt this conversation would be better had in person, rather than over the phone. I led her to an empty conference room, curious about what could possibly bring a judge to my workplace unannounced. Once seated, she came directly to the point. "I witnessed the unfortunate incident at your sister's wedding," she began. "While family disputes are normally outside my professional purview, certain aspects of what I observed raised concerns that I feel obligated to address." My stomach tightened with anxiety. "I'm not sure I understand." Judge Henderson's expression softened slightly. "I'm here as a friend of the family and as someone concerned about what appears to be a pattern of behavior. Your sister's public claims about your property, followed by her reaction when contradicted, suggest this may not be an isolated incident." "It's complicated," I admitted. "Catherine has always been demanding, but she's never been violent before." "Violence often escalates from other forms of boundary violations," the judge noted. "Has your sister made any attempts to access your property without permission?" The question caught me off guard. "She made a copy of my key without asking," I replied. "And she had moving boxes delivered to my apartment." Judge Henderson nodded thoughtfully. "That's concerning. I would strongly advise changing your locks immediately and installing a security system if you don't already have one." Her suggestion seemed extreme until she continued. "In my years on the bench, I've seen many cases begin with seemingly minor boundary crossings that eventually escalated to serious property disputes or worse. The public nature of your sister's claims about ownership of your home, combined with her demonstrated willingness to use force when frustrated, raises red flags I cannot in good conscience ignore." By the time our conversation concluded, Judge Henderson had provided me with contact information for a security consultant and a recommendation for a lawyer specializing in property law just in case. She also gave me her personal number, suggesting I call if Catherine's behavior escalated further. "I hope none of this proves necessary," she said, as she prepared to leave. "But in my experience, it's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared when family dynamics turn contentious." That afternoon, I followed her advice and called a locksmith who replaced all my locks and installed a keypad entry system that would alert me to any access attempts. The following day, a security company installed cameras at my front door and terrace entrance with a monitoring service that would notify me of any unusual activity. These precautions seemed excessive until Catherine and William returned from their honeymoon. Rather than staying at William's apartment as planned, Catherine showed up at my building the very evening of their return, attempting to use her copied key to enter. When it failed, she pressed my buzzer repeatedly until the doorman threatened to call security. The next morning, Catherine appeared at my office, creating a scene in the reception area that required security intervention. "She stole our wedding gift," she shouted, as guards escorted her from the building. "She promised us her apartment, and now she's locked us out." The incident was witnessed by several colleagues and clients, causing whispers that followed me through the hallways for days afterward. My boss, Linda, called me into her office that afternoon. "I don't normally involve myself in my employees' personal lives," she began. "But when those lives spill over into the workplace, we need to have a conversation." I braced myself for a reprimand, but Linda surprised me. "I've known you for years, Amanda. You're one of the most honest, hard-working people on my team. If your sister is claiming you promised her your home, I know without asking that she's not telling the truth." Tears of relief and gratitude sprang to my eyes at this unexpected support, Linda continued. "That said, we can't have scenes like this morning's disrupting business. I'm authorizing you to work remotely as needed until this situation resolves, and I've instructed security not to allow your sister on the premises." With my home and workplace secured, I felt marginally safer, but the situation was far from resolved. Judge Henderson's foresight proved invaluable when I received notice that Catherine had filed for a temporary restraining order against me, claiming I had verbally abused her at the wedding and was now harassing her with threatening messages. The allegations were completely fabricated, but they required a legal response nonetheless. I contacted the lawyer Judge Henderson had recommended, Alexandra Diaz, who helped me prepare a counterfiling, with evidence of Catherine's actual behavior, including security footage of her attempting to enter my apartment and witness statements from the wedding. The day after filing my response, I received an unexpected call from William. His voice sounded strained as he asked if we could meet privately to discuss the situation. Against Michael's advice, I agreed to coffee at a public location where William arrived, looking exhausted and considerably less polished than at the wedding. "I need to apologize," he began without preamble. "I had no idea Catherine had told people we would be living in your apartment. She told me you'd offered a 2-week stay during your business trip, nothing more." His distress seemed genuine as he continued, "Since we've been back, I've discovered several other misrepresentations. Catherine has substantial credit card debt she never disclosed before our marriage. She's been opening accounts in both our names without my knowledge." The conversation revealed that Catherine's deception extended far beyond the penthouse issue. She had apparently created an elaborate fiction about their financial situation, making commitments and purchases they couldn't afford, while assuring William that everything was under control. "I'm not trying to excuse her behavior at the wedding," he said, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "What she did was inexcusable. I just wanted you to know that I wasn't part of any plan to take your home, and I'm dealing with my own revelations about who I actually married." His candor moved me to share some of my own experiences with Catherine's manipulative behavior. By the time we parted, a tentative alliance had formed between us based on mutual concern about Catherine's increasingly erratic actions. That alliance proved valuable when my parents organized a family meeting ostensibly to heal the rift between Catherine and me. What began as a mediation attempt quickly devolved into an ambush, with Catherine tearfully recounting how I had humiliated her at her wedding, and was now turning William against her with vicious lies. "All I ever wanted was a place for us to start our marriage," she sobbed. "Amanda promised us her penthouse, and then publicly took it back, just to embarrass me." When I attempted to defend myself, our parents immediately sided with Catherine. "You've always been so competitive with your sister," my mother lamented. "Even as a child, you couldn't stand to see her happy." William, who had insisted on attending despite Catherine's objections, finally intervened. "That's not what happened," he stated firmly. "Catherine told me Amanda offered a 2-week stay, not permanent residence. She's been telling different stories to different people, and I'm concerned about why." The meeting ended with Catherine storming out, and my parents following her, leaving William, Michael, and me sitting in awkward silence. The gulf between my family's perception and reality had never felt wider, but for the first time I wasn't questioning my own recollection of events. The pattern of manipulation that Michael had helped me recognize was now visible to others, as well, validating what I had experienced for years, but never fully acknowledged. That night, as Michael and I discussed the day's events, I had a revelation that was both painful and liberating. "I've been the victim of Catherine's emotional abuse my entire life." I said the words, feeling strange, but true on my tongue, "and my parents have enabled it every step of the way." Michael squeezed my hand supportively. "Recognizing the pattern is the first step to breaking it. You can't change Catherine, but you can change how you respond to her." With that understanding came a newfound determination to stand my ground, regardless of family pressure or emotional manipulation. The legal battle Catherine had initiated would force a reckoning that was perhaps long overdue. Catherine's restraining order attempt was merely the opening salvo in what became a protracted legal conflict. When it was dismissed due to lack of evidence, she escalated by filing a civil suit claiming I had verbally promised her my penthouse as a wedding gift, and was now reneging on that commitment. The lawsuit was baseless from a legal standpoint, as verbal promises regarding real estate generally aren't enforceable without supporting documentation. However, as my attorney Alexandra explained, the purpose wasn't necessarily to win, but to create enough hassle and expense that I might settle just to end the ordeal. "Your sister is banking on the fact that family disputes are messy, and that you might give in rather than air private matters in court," Alexandra said during our strategy session. "She's also likely counting on your parents to pressure you into settling." Judge Henderson, though she had to recuse herself from any official involvement due to her connection to both parties, continued to provide moral support and practical advice behind the scenes. Document everything she counseled. Every interaction, every message, every witness account of past behavior patterns. Courts look for consistency over time. The discovery process became a revelation in itself. Alexandra's team uncovered a pattern of Catherine manipulating others that extended far beyond our family circle. Former friends, roommates, and colleagues provided statements describing various schemes ranging from borrowed possessions that were never returned to more elaborate cons involving fabricated emergencies to extract money or favors. More disturbing were the emails and texts recovered from Catherine's accounts, revealing her calculated plan regarding my penthouse. Messages to friends boasted about how she would eventually wear Amanda down and end up with that amazing apartment one way or another. One particularly damning exchange with her maid of honor discussed various strategies for creating public pressure, including the wedding announcement that had led to the slapping incident. "I'll make the announcement during my speech," she had written 2 weeks before the wedding. "Once I publicly thank her for giving us the penthouse as our wedding gift, she'll be too embarrassed to contradict me in front of everyone." Amanda always caves when she's put on the spot. The evidence painted a picture not of impulsive entitlement, but of deliberate, premeditated manipulation. This realization was both disturbing and strangely validating. I hadn't been imagining or exaggerating Catherine's behavior. If anything, I had underestimated the extent of her calculations. Several wedding guests voluntarily came forward with statements about Catherine's claims prior to the wedding. Judge Henderson's assistant had overheard Catherine telling multiple guests that I had generously gifted them my penthouse weeks before she made the public announcement. The photographer from the engagement session confirmed overhearing Catherine's plans to use my apartment as their permanent residence, despite my clear statements about a temporary stay only. While the legal proceedings advanced, Catherine launched a secondary campaign to damage my professional reputation. She created social media posts claiming I designed structurally unsound buildings and had stolen clients from former employers. She contacted several of my clients directly, spreading misinformation about project timelines and budget overruns. Linda, my boss, called me into her office after receiving a particularly vicious email from Catherine. "This has gone beyond a family squabble," she said, showing me the message that accused me of professional misconduct and threatened to expose me to the Architectural Licensing Board. "This is now affecting the firm's reputation. We need to take action." With the firm's backing, we added defamation to our countersuit, strengthening our legal position, but further escalating the conflict. Catherine responded by increasing her attacks, now targeting Michael, by contacting his employer with similar false allegations. The stress took its toll on me physically and emotionally. I developed insomnia, lost weight, and found myself jumping at sudden noises. At Michael's gentle insistence, I began seeing a therapist specializing in family trauma, Dr. Rachel Bennett. "What you're experiencing is a normal response to abnormal behavior," Dr. Bennett assured me during our first session. "The relationship patterns you're describing with your sister show classic signs of narcissistic abuse." Over subsequent sessions, Dr. Bennett helped me understand the dynamics that had shaped our relationship since childhood. Catherine's behavior exhibited hallmarks of narcissistic personality disorder, characterized by an excessive need for admiration, disregard for others' feelings, and an inability to handle criticism. Our parents had established a family system that catered to Catherine's demands, while expecting me to accommodate her, creating the perfect environment for her manipulative tendencies to flourish. "Your decision to stand firm about your boundaries is healthy," Dr. Bennett emphasized. "Though it's causing conflict now, it's necessary for your long-term well-being." These insights helped me maintain my resolve through the increasingly bitter legal process. When William filed for annulment 3 months after the wedding, citing fraud and misrepresentation, Catherine's attacks intensified. The annulment filing revealed the full extent of Catherine's financial deceptions, including nearly $200,000 in hidden debt accumulated through secret credit cards and loans. My parents, who had steadfastly supported Catherine throughout the conflict, finally began to question their position when confronted with indisputable evidence of her deliberate deceptions. My father called late one evening, his voice heavy with a realization that seemed to have aged him overnight. "I don't understand how we didn't see it," he said. "All these years we thought we were helping her, but we were just enabling behavior that got worse and worse." My mother took longer to acknowledge the reality of the situation, her identity too wrapped up in being the mother who always supported her misunderstood daughter. But even she couldn't deny the evidence that continued to mount as more people came forward with accounts of Catherine's manipulations. As the court date approached, my anxiety peaked. Despite the overwhelming evidence in my favor, the prospect of publicly confronting Catherine in court filled me with dread. The night before the hearing, I barely slept, rehearsing my testimony and imagining worst-case scenarios. "Remember, this isn't just about the penthouse anymore," Alexandra reminded me that morning as we prepared to enter the courthouse. "This is about establishing a clear record of behavior that will protect you from future claims and manipulations." The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined, but it felt enormous as I walked to the witness stand. Catherine sat at the plaintiff's table dressed conservatively and wearing an expression of wounded innocence that had served her well throughout her life. Our parents sat directly behind her, their faces drawn with the strain of divided loyalties. Judge Martin Feldman, a no-nonsense jurist with 30 years of experience, presided over the hearing, with an air of having seen it all before. As Alexandra had predicted, Catherine's case began to unravel almost immediately, under the weight of contradictory evidence and testimony. Her attorney attempted to paint a picture of a generous sister who had offered her home as a wedding gift, only to cruelly withdraw it out of jealousy. This narrative collapsed when William testified about what Catherine had actually told him regarding the 2-week honeymoon stay, directly contradicting her sworn statement. The most damning evidence came from Catherine's own electronic communications, which Alexandra methodically presented to demonstrate the premeditated nature of her claims. As each message was read aloud, revealing Catherine's calculated efforts to manipulate me and others, I watched my sister's confident demeanor gradually crumble. When my turn came to testify, I spoke clearly about the pattern of boundary violations leading up to the wedding incident, my voice growing stronger as I recounted years of similar behavior that I had previously excused or minimized. Catherine glared at me throughout, occasionally whispering furiously to her attorney. Judge Feldman interrupted at one point, when Catherine audibly scoffed during my testimony about changing my locks. "Miss Bennett," he said sternly, "your reactions are being noted for the record. I suggest you maintain appropriate courtroom decorum." After 4 hours of testimony and evidence presentation, the judge called a brief recess before delivering his ruling. In the hallway, Michael enveloped me in a supportive hug. "You did great," he whispered. "No matter what happens now, you stood up for yourself, and that's a victory." When court resumed, Judge Feldman wasted no time. "Having reviewed the evidence presented today, I find no merit whatsoever in the plaintiff's claim of a promised gift of real property," he stated. "Furthermore, I find compelling evidence of a pattern of deliberate misrepresentation and manipulation on the part of the plaintiff." The judge dismissed Catherine's case with prejudice, meaning she could not refile the same claim. Additionally, he ordered her to pay my legal fees and issued a stern warning about potential perjury charges if she continued making false claims in legal filings. "The court takes a very dim view of using the legal system as a tool for personal vendettas or to pressure family members into giving up their rightful property," he concluded. "I strongly suggest that the plaintiff seek appropriate counseling to address the behavioral patterns evidenced in this case." As the judge delivered his ruling, Catherine's composure finally shattered completely. Rising from her chair, she pointed at me accusingly. "This is all your fault," she shrieked. "Everyone's always on your side. You've turned everyone against me." As court officers moved to restore order, Catherine continued her tirade, accusing the judge, her own attorney William, and finally our stunned parents of conspiring against her. "Nobody ever loved me. Nobody ever supported me like they supported her." The public meltdown, while disturbing, served as the final confirmation of what the evidence had already demonstrated. This wasn't about a misunderstanding between sisters or a disputed wedding gift. This was about a deeply ingrained pattern of manipulation and entitlement that had finally encountered immovable boundaries. As Catherine was escorted from the courtroom, still shouting accusations, I felt an unexpected wave of sadness beneath my relief. The sister I had grown up with, argued with, occasionally laughed with, was lost to me now, replaced by someone I barely recognized and certainly couldn't trust. Outside the courthouse, Alexandra shook my hand firmly. "Congratulations!" This was as definitive a victory as they come. But as I watched my parents follow Catherine's retreating figure, their faces etched with confusion and grief, I knew that in family matters there are rarely true victories, only necessary resolutions and painful growth. 6 months after the court case, my life had achieved a new equilibrium. The immediate legal threat was gone, and with it, much of the acute anxiety that had dominated my days. My penthouse, once the focal point of so much conflict, had slowly reclaimed its identity as my sanctuary, rather than a battleground. The professional damage control took longer. Catherine's campaign of defamation had caused several clients to delay or reconsider projects requiring me to rebuild trust and repair relationships. Linda had been unfailingly supportive, assigning me to high-profile projects that demonstrated the firm's continued confidence in my abilities. "Crisis reveals character," she told me during my performance review, "and yours has proven exceptional under extraordinary pressure." My relationship with my parents evolved in fits and starts. The court case had forced them to confront decades of enabling behavior, a painful recognition that initially manifested as defensive withdrawal. For several weeks after the hearing, they maintained minimal contact, processing their own complicated feelings about their role in Catherine's development. My father was the first to reach out meaningfully, calling one Sunday afternoon to ask if we could meet for coffee. At a quiet corner table in my favorite cafe, he struggled to find the right words before finally speaking from the heart. "I failed you both," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I thought I was being a good father by giving Catherine what she wanted, and expecting you to be the reasonable one. I never realized I was helping create the very problems that would eventually tear our family apart." The conversation was awkward, but healing, opening a door to a more honest relationship than we'd ever had. My mother took longer to come around her identity, too entwined with being the mother who had always smoothed over Catherine's difficulties. But eventually, she too reached out, her perspective shifted by Catherine's increasingly erratic behavior following the court case. "I always thought you were the strong one who didn't need my protection," she admitted during a tearful lunch. "I was wrong to put that burden on you, and wrong to expect you to keep sacrificing for Catherine's sake." William and I maintained an unexpected friendship through the aftermath. His annulment was granted based on Catherine's financial deceptions, and he was slowly rebuilding his life and credit. We occasionally met for coffee, comparing notes on our parallel journeys of recovery from Catherine's influence. "You know what the strangest part is," he reflected during one such meeting. "I still sometimes catch myself wondering if I was too harsh, if I should have tried harder to make it work." That's how effective she was at making me question my own reality. I knew exactly what he meant. Despite overwhelming evidence and the unequivocal court ruling, I still experienced moments of doubt, wondering if I had somehow failed my sister by refusing to give her what she wanted. Dr. Bennett assured me this was normal, a lingering effect of long-term manipulation that would fade with time and continued boundary maintenance. Michael had been my rock throughout the ordeal, providing unwavering support without trying to take over or fight my battles for me. Our relationship deepened through the crisis, his steadfast presence, a counterpoint to the chaos Catherine had generated. Catherine herself remained the great unanswered question in my life. After her courtroom meltdown, she had cycled through various strategies, from rage to victim positioning to grudging attempts at reconciliation when other approaches failed. She moved to another state supposedly for a job opportunity, though rumors suggested she was avoiding creditors and the social consequences of her behavior. We had no direct contact for months, my boundary enforced by the continued restraining order, Alexandra had advised me to maintain. Then on my birthday, an unmarked package arrived, containing a handwritten letter and a small framed photograph of us, as children arms around each other grinning at the camera. The letter was unlike any communication I had ever received from Catherine. Gone was the entitlement, the manipulation, the subtle blame shifting. Instead, the words spoke of rock bottom of counseling of gradual painful self-awareness. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote. "I'm not even asking for it yet. What I did to you was wrong on every level, and no apology can erase that. All I can tell you is that I'm finally getting help to understand why I became the person who could treat her sister that way, and I'm committed to never being that person again." Dr. Bennett helped me process the letter, cautioning against either immediate rejection or uncritical acceptance. "People with long-standing behavioral patterns can change," she acknowledged. "But that change requires sustained effort and doesn't happen overnight. If Catherine is genuinely doing the work, there will be consistent evidence over time." I decided to respond with a brief note acknowledging her letter and expressing hope for her healing journey, while maintaining my distance until there was more evidence of lasting change. It was neither a door slammed shut nor wide open, but rather left slightly ajar, contingent on Catherine's continued choices. The most profound change was within myself. Through therapy and reflection, I recognized how my own behavior had contributed to the dysfunctional family dynamic, not by causing Catherine's actions, but by consistently accommodating them. I had spent a lifetime walking on eggshells, making myself smaller to avoid conflict, sacrificing my needs to keep the peace. "Boundaries aren't just lines you draw for others," Dr. Bennett often reminded me. "They're affirmations of your own worth and right to exist fully in the world." This lesson transformed not just my approach to Catherine, but to all my relationships. I became more assertive at work, more honest with my parents, more authentic with Michael. Rather than diminishing my connections with others, these boundaries actually deepened them, replacing superficial harmony with genuine intimacy based on mutual respect. 1 year to the day after the wedding incident, Michael proposed to me on the terrace of my penthouse, the city lights sparkling around us like earthbound stars. "The timing wasn't coincidental," he later admitted. "I wanted this date to be reclaimed to be about love and commitment, rather than pain and betrayal." As we planned our small intimate wedding, I found myself reflecting on how differently I approached major life decisions now. Where once I might have worried about Catherine's reaction, or my parents' expectations, I now considered primarily what felt right for Michael and me. This wasn't selfishness but self-respect, the healthy centering of my own life narrative. The question of whether to invite Catherine to the wedding was complex. She had maintained her distance, sending occasional updates on her therapy progress, without making demands or attempting to insert herself back into my daily life. The restraint itself was evidence of change so different from her previous boundary-crossing behavior. After much thought and discussion with Michael, Dr. Bennett, and my parents, I decided to extend a carefully framed invitation. It wasn't a return to our previous relationship, but an opportunity to begin defining a new one based on mutual respect rather than historical patterns. Catherine's response was equally measured. She accepted with gratitude but acknowledged the complexity, offering to stay at a hotel rather than with family, and to step back if her presence caused any stress. "This day is about you and Michael," she wrote. "My only role is to support that authentically." The wedding itself was everything Catherine's had not been small and genuine rather than large and showy. Judge Henderson attended as an honored guest, her early intervention having helped prevent a worse outcome to our family conflict. During the reception, she pulled me aside for a private word. "When I approached you after witnessing that slap, I wasn't sure what would unfold," she admitted. "But I've rarely seen someone handle such a difficult situation with more grace and strength. You should be proud of the boundaries you established and the healing you've facilitated, not just for yourself, but potentially for your entire family." Catherine kept her word, maintaining a low profile throughout the event. When we did speak, there was an awkwardness, but also a novel authenticity. No pretense, no manipulation, just two adults carefully navigating damaged terrain with newfound awareness. "I'm happy for you," she said simply, her eyes clear and present, in a way they rarely had been before. "You deserve this happiness, and I'm sorry for how long I resented, rather than celebrated your successes." As Michael and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us to this moment. The penthouse that had been the center of so much conflict now held new memories, new associations. It was no longer just my hard-earned achievement or the object of Catherine's envy, but the place where Michael and I would begin our married life, its walls now echoing with laughter and love rather than accusations and tears. The most valuable lesson from the entire ordeal wasn't about property rights or legal victories. It was the recognition that true strength isn't found in giving in to avoid conflict, but in standing firm in your truth even when it's difficult. It was understanding that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or vulnerability to further harm, but can coexist with strong boundaries. Most importantly, it was learning that family love, when healthy, supports individual growth rather than demanding sacrifice of self. Looking back at the wedding day slap that had once seemed like the end of my relationship with my sister, I now saw it differently, not as a conclusion, but as a painful but necessary catalyst for change. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for others is to stop protecting them from the consequences of their actions, allowing the truth to create possibility for genuine transformation. As I prepare to close this chapter of my life story, I want to ask you, have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with family members who couldn't respect your personal space or property? Did standing your ground ultimately lead to healthier relationships? Or are you still navigating those challenging waters? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's an act of self-respect that can ultimately lead to more authentic connections with the people who truly matter. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage and clarity in your own.